Greetings. I'm posting this video originally as a video response to, I believe it was Tiptoe Chick, who first posted about her magical household. Since that time, I don't even think Tiptoe Chick posts videos anymore. I'm not sure. I'm sorry if that's true, because I did enjoy them so much. But since that time, quite a few others have posted videos on the subject, and this is a subject that means so much to me, and I thought I would share some of my thoughts on the subject with you. I think we pagans, while we seem to have similar paths, a lot of us do have similar paths, but we have a lot of differences. But one thing that we have in common is we all seem to love things. We have a passion for things around us, tools, things that aid us in our practice. I know for me, growing up as a Christian was a very passive experience. But the first thing I noticed when I transitioned to becoming a pagan, to following a pagan path, was I started to acquire more and more things. We all have altars, and we all collect tools, and we craft, and we swap, and I really love that part of it. I honestly, one of the best part of my days is when I get a chance to work with those tools in some way. We have rituals that we tend to do daily that involve things, our candles, our incense, our altars in some way. If you would come into my own magical household, my house, you would see a lot of things that I like to surround myself that are very familiar to you, of course, too. You will see my altar spaces, you will see books, you will see perhaps my crystals or perhaps my tarot cards. But you'll also maybe smell my magical household. You will smell incenses that I burn quite often, or you will smell the oils that we use to dress our candles that we burn every day. You may hear water running. You may hear wind chimes. Particularly for me, the movement of energy is very much a part of the magical environment that I'm in. When energy is stagnant, when it sits, and when the windows are closed, when there is no air moving throughout, when there is no music, when there is no sound of water, or there is no incense, or when it is still, it is stagnant, it is stale, and not at all magical. So for me, part of my magical household involves all of my senses. Being a pagan is not a passive experience for me, but a very active one. I've really particularly enjoyed the videos that some of you have shared. Those of you who are, for one reason or another, more private in their practice, who you do not live in places or in situations where you feel comfortable or you are free enough to make your ritual, your magical space public, you become very, very adept at being very subtle. It looks like just a really pretty collection on the top of a bureau, for instance, but to you it is an altar. I love that, and I think that is really special, because for myself, even though my husband and I shall say, are not in any closet, we are open as to who we are, for the most part. We are private. We are private, and do not consider that much of what we do as common knowledge, as it's anybody's business, to be honest. When people would come into our house, they're welcome. If they ask us questions, we will answer questions about something they see. But a lot of our magical practice, our pagan practices, are private. So I applaud you, and I do follow the same guidelines myself in my home for a lot of reasons. I remember when I was a child growing up, I talked about it earlier in an earlier video. I grew up in a very small town, and I was of the generation that we were thrown out of the house after breakfast, not to return until dinner. And being outside was fun, and the friends were outside, but we like to be indoors sometimes. And we tended to share ourselves with some of the local women, mostly widows. Some we called spinsters. And when I say the word spinster today, I realize that may be a term that some people are offended by. We never meant it as an offensive term, but it was an unmarried woman who seemed to love, for one reason or another, to have children in their homes, and they would invite us into either their homes or into the room where they occupied in the extended family home. Sometimes these women were related to us, but we tended to share them. So it was somebody's grandmother or somebody's great aunt or just maybe a lonely woman who liked children. We would be invited into their spaces, and offered often a cup of tea from a china cup, which was such a thrill. We never saw the chips. We would be offered cookies freshly baked from an oven, the cookies made especially for us, even though she had no idea we were coming. Or we were arrived just in the nick of time to hold a skein of yarn so it could be wound into a ball for her latest knitting project. These spaces seem so magical to me as a child, and I could close my eyes now and I can recall the lavender scents, rooms stuffed with cozy chairs, and cupboards and bookshelves on every wall, and African violets in the window, and shelves would be lined with books or really unique figurines, maybe some animal figurines or some other kind of little objects, little knickknacks were fascinating in their way. I remember seeing puzzle boxes. I remember seeing ornately decorated tea jars and very beautiful glass bottles full of cordials that she had made. And as an adult, I think about those spaces that seemed so magical to me as a child, and I think, they might have been more magical than I even considered. The fascinations that we have with other people sharing their altars and their spaces, we have this fascination because even though we may share a common path, each of us is unique in our own magic. Each of us is unique in our own surrounding. Whether someone is hiding their magical spaces in a well-decorated room or someone else has cupboards upon cupboards of things overflowing to the brim of their tools and supplies, both of them are unique, and both of them have something to offer to the magic in that person's life. The magic is just as real. One is not greater than the other. My magical space is unique to me. Even though my intent may be the same as yours, the magic is all around each of us. But only my eye and only my heart can recognize the magic that is mine. This is really what I wanted to talk to you about. Is it possible that our own magic is stronger when our tools are unique and hold special meaning for us, rather than tools that we buy or purchase that are mass-produced or generic? I had the opportunity to take a class with a well-known herbalist from the Phoenix area, and I want to put my glasses on to make sure I get her name right. So, yes, her name is Julie James. She's a well-known herbalist, like I said, an author of several books, and she really, during this class, made a passionate plea to everyone concerning the coastal sage and chaparral of our Southern California neighborhoods. The plants that grow there and the animals and birds that the plants support are under constant danger from all kinds of things, from new housing developments and new golf courses being built everywhere, to dumping, to pollution, to fires. And in recent years, an increasing danger to these plants is what we call herb crafting. Now, please do not shoot the messenger. I want to make the point that she was trying to make. There is nothing inherently wrong, she says, and I agree, in collecting plants and wildflowers around you and using them for your own intent, for your own purposes, just taking what you need. It is a little different going into land and collecting things that you do not own in mass quantities for the purpose of selling them and making a profit from that sale, particularly when it is something that may be in danger in the first place. Now, her point was not whether that is right or wrong. My point is not whether it is right or wrong. She made a more valid point, which I wish to make to you now. And let's use the example of California white sage, which we all love. I use California white sage all the time, but I do grow my own and use it for my own use. To compare California white sage with something that may be a little more familiar, let's talk about honey. I think all of us are very aware, most people are very aware, that using honey that is grown local to you, from bees that are local to you, is much more beneficial to you, especially if you suffer from allergies from local plants and grasses. The pollen that is collected and used to make this honey by the bees makes a product that is something that will actually help you overcome the symptoms of your allergies. The point that Julie James was trying to make was, even though we are in love with California white sage, please be aware of all the different sages that are grown, not just in California, but all over the world. There are sages that grow, all different kinds, and she, again, is an expert in her field, and she is there to tell us that these other sages hold many, many herbal benefits and magical benefits as well. So the question is, can those local sages have the same benefit to you as a local honey would have to you, and be more magical as a tool in your practice than buying something that is stolen from protected areas of California chaparral and shipped to you? It is just something to think about. I find it very interesting. And one of the reasons I find it so interesting is I am a true believer in not just making your own tools, but gathering your own tools, discovering your own tools from your environment. I have many items in my own magic cupboards that have served me very well in one way or another, or that will, I know, serve me. I want to share a few of those with you. They're just common items, but I want to show you what I'm talking about. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to reposition the camera, so just give me a minute to do that, please. Okay, I think you could maybe see the table here in front of me. I hope so. Let me try a little more. Let me try moving it back a little bit. Okay, the first item that everyone has is right here in front of me, rose petals. Rose petals. Let me put them out on the table here, some of these. Everybody has them. And I don't like this. I can't see them. Wait. The first item is rose petals. I have some here in both a bowl, the rose heads, and petals in a basket here. Right here, you can see. My friend grows roses. She bought a house and she has beautiful heirloom roses that are very fragrant, and she's an organic grower, so they're never touched with pesticides. But she cuts me giant bouquets of roses when she comes to visit me, and I leave them in vases around the house, and as they start to droop, I pull off the heads, and then I just leave them to dry in bowls or in baskets, and eventually I end up with either the dried head or the petals. And then I use a lot of these. I make all of my own incense blends, so rose petals are something that I use a lot of times to boost an incense. There are a lot of good properties for roses inherently to the rose, but also think about the color of the rose. We have white, we have red, we have yellow, pink. Also think about, these are friends roses, these are friendship roses, but I also have roses that I have collected from both bouquets that my husband has given me, or one very special bouquet that I have was actually the last bouquet of roses that my father bought for my mother before she passed, and their marriage lasted, I think 63 years, perhaps 64 years they were married. 63 or 64 years, and very strong love. So any kind of spell work or anything, or ritual work that I want to do that has to do with that I need a strength of a love to help boost that magic, I will use some rose petals from that supply. So roses, very typical, and every week and how we have generic ones, but those that you collect yourselves that have other meaning other than just the regular meaning and property of the rose itself, that much better, that much stronger. Okay, move these out of the way, get something else to show you. Shells, we all use shells. Shells are symbolic, of course, of water, a lot of things, but also these shells have another meaning, because these particular shells, I do collect them all over the place, but these shells my dog collected from Dog Beach. These are shells that when we were walking along the water there, we picked up and we brought these home, and I will use these shells sometimes I will use them when I am doing some kind of magic or spell work for my dog, or for somebody's dog, or sometimes even for my cats. I use these shells when one of my daughter's cats was missing. We wanted to boost the signal, so we used these shells to do that. Okay. Speaking of my daughter, speaking of my daughters, I have 3 daughters, and this is I'm really terrible at this. I'm so sorry. Anyway, this spoon was the spoon that I fed those babies many years ago, their first spoonfuls of solid food. And now this same spoon I use to feed my altar. This is a dish, the blend that I have right now that I'm using on my altar, and I use incense burning on a charcoal disc, and this is the spoon I use to feed first my children. Now I feed my altar with it. So it is another strong, this tool I've had in my hand for my oldest daughter is 40. So I've had the same tool for 40 years. So It's very much my tool. Speaking of something that I've had for a long time, these shoes, these were my shoes. These were my first shoes ever when I was a baby. And these shoes are a very valuable magical tool for me. These are the shoes that I wore when I began my journey on this path, when I first stood upright and made my first steps. And these are a lot of really strong energies. If I find myself deviating from my path, losing my way for whatever reason, I can get these shoes out and I can use these shoes as a tool to remind me of the path that I am on, to help bring me back to the path that I want to be on. Again, old shoes to most everybody, to me, a magical, very strong magical tool and reminder of the magic that is within me. Speaking of journeys, we've been on journeys other than the beach. Another place, rocks. We all have crystals, but rocks can be just as magical as crystals. This rock actually came from Loch Ness in Scotland. I brought this home with me from Scotland, and it is a magical tool, not necessarily because it's from Scotland, even though Scotland holds a very warm place in my heart. But I love this rock because this rock reminds me of where I am. How do I say this? We are very much attuned to, I am at my desk, I am in my living room, I am in my house, I am in Southern California, I am in the United States. You know, we really get attached to a place that we are in and hold so much importance to the place. But something like this rock reminds me that how we are really of this earth, how small this earth actually is, how connected we really are on this earth, in this planet, in this universe at this time. A very short plane ride, to pick up this rock, and this rock has the memory of all of the people that I saw and all of the places that I saw, and the reminding of all of the centuries that have gone by. And it puts things in perspective for me. When I'm seeking perspective, when I'm seeking to see this time will pass, this day will pass, this thing that seems so important to me is so insignificantly small. Something like this rock is a very magical tool to help me remember that. Another thing that I like to gather is in this jar. It's water. And we all use water all the time, of course, in our magic. All of us. Some of us make water. Some of us use holy water. We get holy water. Some of us buy or make Florida water. I usually collect waters from different places. I have seawater. I have water from the Colorado River that was very important, from a very important visit I made there with some friends and under a very beautiful full moon. And I have that. This happens to be a very cherished jar of water, because this is actually something that is quite rare where I live. This is actually rainwater that I collected at my house. And rainwater is very precious to us here in California. We suffer from droughts so often, and we get so little rainwater many years. So when we do get it, it is very precious, and I keep it in here. And I have crystals, you see, in the bottom of the, I guess you can see in here. I always keep crystals in my water, and I recharge it from time to time. Before I go to use it, I will put it back out in the moonlight and give it a little bit of a recharge. But it is very precious to me. By the way, when I store water, I do put a small amount of vinegar or vodka. Either one works very well in the water, just to keep the bugs away. But it doesn't affect the magical properties at all for me. So anyway, again, this water, while holy water or Florida water or whatever other kinds of water would have significances, this has a great significance for me because it is something most precious. Number one, to me, and secondly, collected by me. So it is mine. And speaking of what is mine, feathers. We all have feathers. We use them for different things. These feathers came to me. These feathers were collected from my yard. I'm sure they do not have a very happy story that goes with them, but because we do have hawks and we got a lot of things, a lot of battles going on, territorial battles in our yard with the birds and the other animals. But anyway, at any rate, they came to me. They came to me into my yard. They were given to me by somebody, some bird, something. They are meant to be mine. So they will be used for something in the future. Right now they go into my cupboard. And when I need something that will include a feather, these are two that I will be keeping in mind. Two I will add these to the collection. Okay? And then finally, I have one more item. I don't hear people talk about too often, but this is, we call this a talisman because this is something that it has just a little object. It has symbols engraved on the front. It has symbols on the front. I don't think you can see it. Oh yes, you can. A goddess. It has the goddess and the sun, moon, and stars on the front. I think I may put a hole in it and use this as a necklace sometime. I rather like it. But that's not why I have it here in my magical tools. The reason I have it in my magical tools is on a day that I really needed to find this, and a day I really needed to pick this up and turn it over, I read what was on the back. And it says on the back, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." And the day that I found this and picked this up and held it in my hand and turned it over and read that was exactly the day I needed to hear that. And so I brought this home, and I keep this with me. And this very many days finds its way onto one altar or another in my home. I hold it in my hand very often when I'm reading my tarot. It's a sentiment that I need to remind myself of very often. So this is a very important magical tool for me. One that I did not make, one that, yes, it is mass produced, yes, it was purchased, but it has a very significant purpose for me. So it has to be included here. There's all kinds of things that we collect, all of us have around us. And I want you, as I finish here, let me turn the camera back on my face. I like to talk to you. I like to look at you when I'm talking to you. So just give me a minute here. Okay, that's better. Okay, these are just a few of the things, like I said, that are part of my magical household. There are very many more things. For everybody, for most people, these are very common items. But for me, they are just the ticket for some spell or another. Something that I need. When I'm doing spell work, I rely upon items that hold significance for me to aid in raising my personal energies to perform the magic. When friends come into my house, they might notice a few things that are out of the ordinary. They might notice that I have illuminated scrolls on my wall. I have a spinning wheel beside my fireplace. I have little altars in rooms around the house, in certain places around the house. But for most people, my house really isn't very magical. But for me and my husband, our house is maybe the most magical of all. The house itself. And it's kind of interesting because we noticed a few years ago, we have spent a lot of time remodeling and moving rooms around and adding rooms and taking down walls, and after we raised our children and they moved out, we had other relatives, parents, his mother at one time, my parents both at one time, my brother at one time, live with us for periods of time and leave. So we do a lot of shifting around of things. But it wasn't until like a couple years ago when we were finally settling into, okay, it's just the two of us and just the house. Nobody's coming, nobody's leaving. And we noticed our house is really almost laid out like a giant altar. It's very magical in its arrangement. If you are familiar with the elements, the north corresponding, the direction of north, south, east, west corresponding to what element? Earth, air, fire, water. To the tarot deck, the connection with the tarot. It's very interesting, actually. In our house, beginning in the east, the two rooms that face the morning sun, and the garden in the front, we have they are part of the time they are guest rooms, but all of the time they have other purposes. And all of the time, one of the rooms is the sewing room. I call it, it's a sewing room, but it's not just a sewing room. All of the projects, like the sewing projects, needle projects, knitting. I do knob bending, which is like a medieval predecessor to knitting. I weave, I spin my own wool, and I do symbol weaving. A lot of my tools are in there, my patterns are in there, my supplies are in there, the beginnings of things that I make in that room. Beside the room I'm in right now, we call our parlor, and this room is actually our morning room. This is the room. On this table I will sit, I will take tea in here sometimes, but I will sit in here and I'll do beadwork, I will do journaling, I do my tarot reading in here. Any kind of divination I usually do in this room. Coincidentally also our archery equipment is in there, the arrows and the because I'm always trying to caution people not to beware of the sharp arrows in here. Anyway, continuing around the house in the south on the southernmost wall of our house is both the fireplace and the stove. Now that we've remodeled, that whole entire end of our house in the south is kitchen and entertaining space. And in my family, well, my husband and I are both very passionate cooks. Our children also share the passion, and most of our friends and most of our gatherings that we do in this house are around food. Food. Cooking, sharing meals, sharing the space, and we all tend to be in that space. Our passion, our activity, what connects us with each other takes place in that space. Continuing around to the west, in the west end of my house, the west of my property, my swimming pool is located, but the west side of my house, I believe it is 33 feet long, is you may call it a sun porch. It is actually like a family room to us. We have our comfortable chairs, and our television in there, and big tables so that we gather with friends for games and things like that. It is where we go at the end of the day to refresh ourselves, to to relax. And then again, continuing once more to the north is our master bedroom. And I find it very significant that our master bedroom is in the north end of the house. We were grounded, we grew up from the same place. We came from our roots, we share a common roots, growing up together as we did from children in the same place, being outside together all of those days and weeks and months when we were not allowed in the house, walking around, taking walks, long walks, sitting on the hills, watching the stars, watching the clouds, picnics on the grass. Very, very connected to the earth, very connected to our roots, where we came from. Our bedroom, every bit of furniture in our bedroom is something that was a family piece, something that was either an antique, owned by relatives. Much of the furniture was built by relatives, including our bed, which was built by my great-grandfather, and all of our children were conceived in that bed. And that is where we go each night at the end of every day and wake up at the beginning of every day, and the end and the beginning every day. Our ancestor altar is also in there, where we connect with our relatives, where we connect. Perhaps the most interesting of all, to me anyway, is with all of this adding on one room and another and remodeling, our house is a rather odd layout where we ended up with one room in the very middle. And the room is not very large. It's maybe 10 by 11 feet, I think it is. But in this room are many things. In this room is, first of all, our home office. We run a small business, and this is our home office where all of our computers are and all of the work that we do each day takes place. This is the room where we have most of our library of all of our research for all of our activities we do with our medieval hobbies, all of our music history, all of our medieval cookbooks, all of our illuminating calligraphy books, everything that we do, all of the different crafts and things that we do and arts that we do as a result of our hobby, located in there. And most importantly as well, it's also a recording studio. We have recorded music, written music all of our lives together, and most recently in the last, I want to say 6 years or so, we have recorded, I think, 5 CDs together with a group of other musicians that share our hobby with us, and we've made those music. Everything that we have been is in that room. It is the heart center of our home. Everything we have been, everything that we are, and every place that we are going, that room has some effect on that. That room is a magical tool along our journey. Thank you for listening. I hope I gave you some things to think about. Hope I didn't offend anybody in any way. I ask you to look around you, look around your own spaces, and look at the magic that is truly around you, the magic that is truly a part of your own household, beyond what it is that you buy, and sometimes beyond even what you make. Things that you find, things that you have, things that you've carried with you on your journey. I would be most interested to hear about those things, and I think others would too. So anyway, that's all for now. I'm really happy to be back, and I hope to see a lot more of you soon. I'm Rebecca, and I wish you blessings.